Redline Logbook here for D. Gray Man's Destruction of the Black Order arc. And this is a very short comedy arc that, for the most part, isn't really relevant to the rest of the story going forward, but it's still technically part of the story, so let's go. The arc starts off with Crowley waking up from his coma, which is a good thing. Of course, he has no idea what's been happening this whole time, and he actually starts freaking out, wondering where everyone is, because his last memories are of fighting the Noah, so he's afraid that everyone might be, dead or something. That's when a nurse shows up with a vial of medicine, except a closer look at the bottle shows you that there's a skull with crossbones on it, so it's more like poison. We then have a small time jump to where everyone in the Black Order are currently packing up because they're moving. Yeah, so they determine the Black Order is no longer safe and they have to change where the headquarters is located. In the process of packing everything up, Alan accidentally knocks over one of the vials in the science lab, and him and Tin Campy grow long, beautiful hair. And apparently this is the third accident to happen during the moving process. Unfortunately, Bookman's hair was turned into a bunny ears, and Levy and Conda were turned into children. Once again, this is a comedy arc, so this will never be brought up again, but this heavily implies that the science team invented basically the elixir to youth. Just gonna point that out. While in the process of doing the moving process, Kamui then informs Alan that the Order is going to start using the Ark as a weapon against the Earl and the Noah. And as the only one who knows the song to control the Ark, that means he's going to have to be put on the front lines when it comes to this situation. Now they're trying to encourage him, saying, we don't believe that you're a traitor or anything like that, just because you know the song. Ignore what you're hearing from other people. But Alan isn't upset about that. No, the thing that's bringing Alan down is the fact that it was Mana who planted this song in his head. And so Alan is beginning to doubt basically his father, questioning if his father was the 14th and that this whole time he was using Alan. But obviously Alan doesn't want to believe that because, once again, Mana is his father. He loves him. The only good part about the fact that Alan is consistently doubting himself at this moment, and Mana and everything, is the fact that Link, the man whose job it is to spy on him, is beginning to realize that Alan is a legitimate, honest person who really doesn't know what's going on. Alan goes back with the others to continue help packing when another experiment falls on Lena Lee this time, and now she can only talk in meows. Yes, she basically has the voice of a cat. Pretty much everyone determines the science team are a bunch of perverts, the fact that they would invent something like this. And then the science team's like, well, at least it isn't as bad as stuff that Kamui creates. That stuff is actually dangerous. And Alan's like, is that stuff stored here? And John's like, no, we put that in storage. We gotta keep that away from everyone. Kinda's crazy. That is when the damage from the fight with Lulubelle finally catches up to the Black Order, and the power just cuts out. A creepy voice then starts laughing, let me correct that, cackling throughout the entire building. People start freaking out, saying if it's a ghost or something. Other people are like, it's probably Kamui messing with everyone. It's not, he's also freaking out. That's when the door starts to slowly creak open. Everyone gets scared, ready for a second to fight, but then the head nurse walks through, and everyone just calms down for a second. That is, until the head nurse decides to bite Alan on his arm. They pull her off of her, and they realize her eyes are basically gone completely white, her veins are bulging out of her skin, and she's just gone completely feral. Miranda tries to talk to her, but then she gets bit on the neck. Obviously, Miranda freaks out because of this, jumps away, but then she begins to transform. Her eyes go also the black-white, and her skin begins to pulsate with veins. Mary, with his incredible hearing, realizes Miranda's heartbeat is kind of strange, and he goes in to see what's wrong with her. Then she bites him. The thing is, the way it's angled and the way everyone sees it, it's taken as some kind of sexual thing, including by Mary for a second before he actually gets bit. And of course, Mary also transformed. And that's when a bunch of other people just burst through the doorway, all veiny and bug-eyed. And that's when everyone realizes, oh, it's a zombie attack. Obviously, the extras are able to use their innocence to force people back and to run away. They grab everyone else and start running from the zombies. Al actually tries to talk first, but then he's, of course, grabbed by the collar and dragged away. They all run to a room, close the door, lock it, just hide under a bunch of tables so this way they can't be seen or heard. The science team then starts to discuss what's going on. They are completely confused on what's happening. That is when Kamui and a Kamui robot are sitting there also hiding. No one notices them, and they say, well, it's a virus. If you get bit, you'll transform into one of them. That's how they spread it. And everyone's like, oh, how do you know that? And Kamui straight up says, because I invented the virus. And all at once, everyone attacks Kamui, because of course they would, because he's a jackass. Unfortunately, his robot is actually quite powerful, and is able to beat everyone up and chain them to the wall. Once again, this is a comedy arc. Obviously, Conda's robot couldn't actually beat an exorcist in a fight, but once again, comedy. The only one who doesn't get tied up is, of course, Lena Lee, his sister, She then tries to beg him to stop, let them all go, but she can only talk in meows. So the only thought that goes to Kanda's mind is that this is some kind of weird sex thing that they're doing with Lena Lee, and he straight just pulls a fucking machine gun on them. Obviously, River's not in the mood. He's going to play the straight man here, and he's basically said, explain what you mean by virus. What is happening? And Kamui's response is, well, that was Kamui vitamin D. And that's when River and all the other scientists remember, oh, that. Yeah, so apparently Kamui invented this as basically a stimulant that got rid of tiredness. Because the science team does all this overtime, they're always exhausted. So this was meant to be a way of getting them through it. The only problem is, it worked way too well. It juiced up their adrenaline so much that they lost their minds. Oh, but Kamui gets even stupider on this. He didn't just create a zombie virus, he also never invented a vaccine. Apparently, the way to create the antibodies is to find patient 0 and then make a vaccine from them. The only issue is he doesn't know who patient 0 is, 1, and 2, for some reason, he didn't keep the antidote he made from last time. Because, once again, this was something that he tested on his team before, and they cured everyone last time. Which means he kept the virus, but he didn't keep the antidote. So now the group has to sneak around, avoiding all the zombies to find patient 0, whoever that is. And while they're doing that, Link is writing up a report explaining how Kamui should be removed from all authority as possible. And of course, Kamui's robot then decides to eat Link's notebook. Alan is starting to freak out, and veins are starting to pop up on his face because, once again, he got bit earlier. But he got bit on the arm made of innocence, and so it's taking a while for the virus to actually infect his body. But it is slowly happening. While they were able to avoid all the other zombies, unfortunately there are extra zombies as well, and those zombies are the generals. They were all apparently taking a bath in the springs when they got attacked by the zombies and infected. Sicario's the first to attack, just starts smashing things. Jefferson's next, he actually takes out Link by biting him, and then Cloud comes up and bites Bookman, who apparently was kind of into that because well, she's in a towel, so she's basically naked. Alan faces off against Sicario, but the other two generals are still ready for a fight. In fact, they're even asking for it. And that's when Kanda's like, okay, did you finish Mugen? Is it the prayer's done? And River's like, yeah, but it's back in the lab. That's when Kamui says, well, I dropped by over there because I thought we might need the innocence. And that's when Kamui's like, great, give me my sword. And Kanda's like, well, it was full of zombies, so I then immediately ran away. And so at that moment, since they're all defenseless, the two generals attack. And Kamui's only response is to have his robot then shoot off rockets everywhere and just blow everything up. Even Alan got hit, because Kamui just has to keep making everything worse. When Alan wakes up after being blown up, he's actually in Crowley's room. When he pulls back the sheet, he sees Crowley there, all chained up, freaking out. Alan's first thought is, hey, Crowley's awake, that's great. And he actually tries to talk to him for a second, but obviously the zombies are coming, and so that is when the last of the survivors grab Alan and drag him into a separate room. These being Robbie, Kanda, Johnny, and Kamui's robot. Next thing you know, there's a knocking at the door behind them. They all jump back, get ready for a fight, but then the voice on the side says, hey, open up, it's me. And they're all like, oh, it's Crowley. That's great, he's awake. But what if he's infected? And of course, they have an argument over who has to open the door now. Obviously, they choose the robot because it's a robot, but the robot's response is basically, this is an obvious horror movie trope where the person who opens the door immediately gets killed. I don't want to do that. Don't make me do it. But Alan is able to convince the robot to open the door, and then he's immediately have his head cut off. And everyone's response is the same, which is, oh, so it is just like the movies. Of course, Crowley's infected, and he starts beating everyone's ass. Alan's able to get a good shot on his stomach, which causes Crowley to then spit up a cap, which was to the medicine he took earlier with the skull and crossbones on it. When Johnny picks up the cap, he realizes, oh, this is the virus. He's patient 0. After getting knocked around by Alan a little bit, Crowley then runs away, but they all realized, wait, we need him to create an antivirus, so they start chasing after Crowley, and then from behind, all the zombies, including the general zombies, start chasing after them, so it basically turns into this Scooby-Doo chase. So while the Scooby-Doo chase is going on, that is when we go over to Kamui's group. Yeah, that's right. A few of them actually did make it. Of course, being Kamui, Lena Lee, River, and the fourth scientist. River then ties all of them up, and Kamui obviously demands why he's doing this. And River's only response is, my body's moving on its own, I have no control over it. River then pulls out a knife and puts it to his own throat, and then a ghost basically comes out of River's body, and then starts to demand that Kamui listen to him. Kamui gets so scared, he turns to a block of ice and just stops listening altogether. And so River then punches him in the face. Well, the ghost controlling River punches him in the face. And after he regains his senses, Kamui's only response is, are you River's secret love child? Obviously, he gets punched in the face again. Then Kamui comes to his senses again and then goes, oh, are you a ghost? And now even River is beginning to get pissed off. But the stupidity doesn't end here because the ghost then says he's going to slit River's throat if the order continues to move away. And so he demands that Kamui stop the move. And Kamui's only response is, I have to ask the higher-ups about that. And of course, the ghost response is to start to cut River's neck. We then get a small flashback where everyone is basically taking all of the dangerous things that Kamui invented and are now putting into storage, including the virus. While they're doing this, Robbie ends up seeing them, asks what's going on, and at first they want to keep it a secret because they want to keep all the things that Kamui does secret, but then they're like, okay, this room here we use as storage because it has a ghost in it. Or at least that's what everyone says. They don't believe in ghosts, even though they work for the Black Order, which deals with all kinds of supernatural things, so this doesn't even make sense. But basically, they use this haunted room as a way to hide all the dangerous stuff that Kamui creates. And that's the room that they are currently hiding in, which is why the ghost was then able to take over River. Back to the present, the ghost then continues to demand that Kamui do as he says, but Kamui responds the same way, which is, I have no control over this. The people way above me are the ones deciding this. I'm just middle management. The ghost then just gives up. It just drops the knife. It clearly was just bluffing. It has no interest actually hurting anyone. The ghost just didn't want to be alone again. Back when this ghost was a person, it was brought to the Black Order, where multiple experiments were done to it. Obviously, these being the experiments to create artificial exorcists, but it never worked out, obviously, and eventually he died. He then looks at Lena Lee and says, I'm jealous of you. And he's not jealous that he didn't get to become an exorcist. No, he's jealous that he died alone. She had Kamui, someone to sacrifice himself for her. And Kamui's response is, don't say that. No one sacrificed anything. We're helping each other. The ghost then jumps out of River and goes after Lena Lee, grabs onto her and says, are you happy? I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. Basically implying it wants to just possess her. Kamui then starts to freak out, tries to go towards his sister, but he's all tied up. That's when the entire roof and walls just explode because Alan's currently fighting Sicario again. Then in the giant commotion, Alan gets bit, Robbie gets bit, and Kanda gets bit. Oh, and Kamui's robot starts to play dead. It's a robot, it can't get infected, but whatever. And of course, the ghost decides to possess Lena Lee, starts laughing, and says it is going to make sure that they all get infected, so this way, they can't leave. So yeah, we actually learn how Crowley was infected. Because they used his room as storage space for all of Kamui's insane inventions, the ghost had access to Kamui's virus. He took the virus, possessed a nurse, and then force-fed it to Crowley. Also, he didn't have to be alone again. All the zombies then attack. That is when both River and Rob, the other scientist, we finally get his name, push Crowley out of the way, sacrificing themselves so he can be saved. The reason for this is because, while Kamui is kind of an idiot and a bastard, he's the best scientist they have and the best one at making an antivirus. Crowley then attacks Kamui. His robot then saves him, bites down onto Crowley's arm, and declares that Crowley's the one who's the source of the infection. First thought that goes up through Kamui's mind is, oh, thank God you're awake. So yeah, the man's an idiot, but he also has a good heart. The possessed Lena Lee then grabs onto Kamui, pins him down, and basically orders the zombies to bite him. They start moving in. That's when Kamui then starts rattling off name after name after name after name, and the ghost begins to recognize some of these names, so he orders all of the zombies to stop, and Kamui continues to say name after name after name after name. Kanda, after he's finished saying all the names, then says, I haven't seen all the Leverly family records, but if you're not a member of their family, then you have to be one of these names. And Kamui tells him he had no intention of leaving anyone behind. He promises to remember all of them, and not just him and the other people who got experimented on, but everyone that sacrificed themselves for the world, for the cross. Remembering them is all he can do in the end, but he doesn't intend on letting any of them be forgotten in time. Unfortunately, the ghost lost control over the zombies, and they attack. Kamui doesn't seem to care because he has his robot. As Crowley then tries to bite Kamui, is then injected with the antivirus. Yeah, so when Kamui's robot bit Crowley before, it was sucking up some of his blood, and this whole time it was working on the antivirus. Now that it's finished, it's able to save everyone. And so Crowley's all excited, he stands up all proud. He's like, okay, here we go. We're gonna do this. And then Sicario throws his weapon and completely annihilates Crowley's robot. Yeah, so that big heroic moment, just gone. But hey, Crowley's back. He's uninfected. That's great. He starts to get his consciousness back. He realizes where he's at. He sees everyone. He gets excited. He runs over to them. He gets bit again. Yeah, so Crowley's now a zombie again. And with nowhere to go and no robot to help him, both Lena Lee and Kamui get bit as well. And so the entire Black Order has been annihilated. And then at the end of the arc, we get a tiny little box that says, the next day, Bach showed up. He saw what was happening and he created an antivirus. That's it. That's how the arc ends. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more D-Gray and other things. Thank you and have a great day.